So bear with us and we'll get going. Thanks, Jeff.
Some of the you have to turn me on. There we go. Some of the complications of technology, I guess. Good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. One of the things I was going to point out before we moved on is, this is at our wastewater treatment plant. We have a series of tunnels. All these videos or all these pictures I'm showing you are inside the tunnel or inside the lower levels of our buildings. We're talking anywhere from 15 to 17-foot ceilings. And when we talk about the flood, everything was full of water. We'll show you this on the outside. We talked about the amount of water that came through in a very short period of time. So here's our video.
I'll play it on there. Play it outside of this PowerPoint. Okay.
When you're in the daylight hours, this is the morning after. This is the hangover stage. During the night, when we had lots of water and a lot more water, we'll show you some of the pictures. Those are stills or videos, though. This is the residual, the river, still coming through our plants about 8 o'clock, between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning. The lights, the yard lights are just starting to turn off. You now start to see our clarifiers, our aeration basins. The little silver 6-inch kick plates you see. On the still pictures, when it's nighttime, you won't be able to see those because they're underwater. During the night, all of our clarifiers were full of water. Absolutely, just the river was over the top. That stairwell, there's 3 flights of stairs below the water level. The best guess is a 1,000-year storm. How they rate that on a 100-year storm is one that they figure would happen once in 100 years. Now, part of the reason why this has happened to us is in our area, we had a big fire the spring or the fall before this, so at the end of 2013, we had a pretty good-sized fire in the hills above us. And so when it rained, nothing was there to hold the rain back, and it just washed everything into the river, washed it into our facility. The water at the high point was just under the bottom of that window. That is an air intake system for our tunnels. It was pulling in 2 feet of water at the bottom of the air intake. We had to have a little fun with the video. We were a lot discouraged. Our employees who work there, I've got one who's got 35 years of experience. You want to see a grown man cry? He's worked there for 35 years, and this is what we came to work to. My other operators, we've had them there for 27 years and 26 years and 20. Our youngest operator has only been with us 20 years. The force of the water took these large tanks and just lifted them out of their securing cradles. They just floated. and just ripped everything out. We actually did. You know, you've probably been told it's good to be number one. We are number one. We are insured by Utah Local Governments Trust. We are the largest single event claim they have ever paid out on. Yeah. You see, there's no kick plates under those, around those handrails because they're all under the water. Those are primary clarifiers. The river is over the top. Right there, that's the access hatch. The water is 17 feet deep. That is that same secondary clarifier you guys have to see in the daylight. We have spent, since that time to today, about $3.5 million to replace pumps and motors and controls. It's funny, the insurance company doesn't cover asphalt, and you'll see pictures of where the river just washed roads away. But because they're part of the ground, they don't get covered. But, you know, they cover your tankage, they cover your pumps and motors, those kinds of things. So we had to, part of our money came from insurance company, part of it came from our own budgets, part of it came from a grant loan mix between the Community Impact Board and the Water Quality Board. Now, $3.5 million for some systems probably doesn't sound like a lot of money. It is 5 times our annual budget. So we spent in a year to recuperate or to recover 5 years worth of budget. That's where some of the road was washed away. During this recovery, our biggest concern was how do we make this plant operate again while we try to recover? And again, I credit our employees and their experience, their expertise to know how to do that. This happened on a, I guess you call it a Saturday night or Sunday morning. You want a little revenge with the state regulators, find an opportunity to call them on a Sunday morning at 4 in the morning and get them out of bed. And we had several phone calls back and forth between when we got to the point we could figure out what to do and 6 o'clock in the morning. You see the stain on the digester wall there? That was the high point of the water against that tank.
That when you found it, you said?
This is the Price River jump inspection. Yeah. This same storm event, by the way, I guess this is not part of my presentation, but while we're watching some of these videos, about a total of 45 homes were damaged. 35 or 34 of them have had to be removed. They were just taken out. The foundations were damaged. FEMA made a new determination of where you could build a house now. And 11 of those homes were able to be left in place. And the other 34 or so were told, this is now the floodplain, you cannot build here. So those people who own that property suddenly have pasture. Keep an idea, or keep a lookout for some of this equipment, because we're going to show you some after pictures as well. Some of these tanks that are laying there. Once we got all the water out, we had to get the mud out. We were also trying to keep the wastewater plant running. It took us 2 days to get our disinfection back online. The state was really good to work with us, but we didn't have full treatment. We were doing just primary treatment, but we had our disinfection up and running in 2 days. And so what we were doing is we were disinfecting our effluent to try to compensate for what went down the river. So Kim Shelley talked earlier about a sanitary sewer overflow. This counted against us as a sanitary sewer overflow in our system. We had a surface aerator that we used to aerate our ponds when we do one of the processes, and it's on a flotation platform. That platform ended up 2 miles down the river, and then some nice soul dumped 2,500 gallons of waste oil in the sewer system as we were recovering. And so we boomed it and we recovered it right at our plant, right in our primary clarifier. And we paid a company, and that's how we know it was 2,500 gallons, because we paid them to come and suck it off and take it to that company in North Salt Lake here that takes care of that kind of stuff. But that's what they carried away. You can turn your video on. It took us about a month for most of our parameters to come back in line. When I say parameters, that would be suspended solids, BOD, those basic secondary treatment parameters. It took probably 90 days for us to get our ammonias back in line. So this is that same picture you saw earlier, except for this. The red area shows where the flood waters went. All of our facilities are surrounded. The ponds you see on the lower level, those are behind some dikes, and so they weren't damaged at all. And that really saved our bacon in this whole affair, because we were able to bring in pumps, and we pumped out every single one of our treatment tanks up into the ponds. So we started with one, started with the primary, got it cleaned out, and then turned the wastewater flow into that. Got a secondary done, turned the wastewater flow into that. And we just did that with every single tank. We were able to clean out, get the mud out. So again, just a few days, we were able to give, the community's treatment for the wastewater. Those were all been replaced. We used a company up in Salt Lake. I take that back. That was one of the companies we were using. We were using about 4 different shops. And as fast as we could take them out, we sent them out and said, we need to evaluate it. This is an emergency situation. If it can be salvaged with minimal repair, we need you to do that. And some of these, we had turnaround time, within just a couple of days. Now, the other thing we had was, we have also, because we are located in rural Utah, we have a lot of spare parts. Spare motors, drive units, things like that. This is a series of slides show our analysis. This is our flow. You can see the dates at the bottom. It just went our normal flows. The red line is outlined on our permit of what we should be under at 3 million gallons, and we just took it clear to the top and down, somewhere over 8 million gallons. Here's our BOD. So we had large spikes, and then we had gotten things online, and then we had second spikes, and that's one of the things we learned. We'll talk about that as well. Is one of the things you really have to guard against is secondary permit violations. I'm not sure what's happening. It looks like the Olympics. Okay.
Is the next video?
No, not yet.
Maybe your thumb drive has some water in it.
I think this is kind of what happens when you have, an HP and you try to bring it into an apple. They don't really match up on that well. Okay, here's our suspended solids, and again, you can see our initial violations, and then we had secondary violations because we started getting things back online. We found also, you know, those machine shops who helped us out initially, they got us a quick turnaround time. A lot of times it was just, yes, this will run for a short period of time. After about 60 days, the windings would fail. No problem. We have to get it out and back in again. So some of these pieces of equipment we were doing a couple of different times, but it was what we could do right now. And then our ammonia, much slower in getting it turned around. And if you don't work in wastewater treatment, you may not understand that your ammonias take a lot longer to develop the microorganism base you need to do those removals, because we washed everything out in the flood. Everything was gone. And again, our chlorine residual. I mentioned we over-chlorinated for the first few days just to take care of the downstream users. And then our E. coli. So, what did we do right? We're going to need you here in just a second. The first thing we did right was we notified, in our case, DEQ. We had good communications. We notified them immediately, and we kept them apprised. They were good to work with us. I think I need, yeah. So it used to be that they were the big fish in the ocean, and we were always getting eaten by the state or by the EPA. Yep. But they've now had some training where they've been told to be kinder, gentler, and more cooperative. And here's, I don't know if you want to turn that up. Yep, you got to turn it way up. So they were the sharks and we were the fish. Now they've had a little change of heart for better training. But, what's
it called? The 9M words?
Yep. But we'll still run into this every now and again.
I think you all know that I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Okay. The second thing we did right was immediately we focused on the downstream users. Primarily when we discharge into the river, they use it for irrigation and livestock. And so there's not much recreation. The Price River is too thin to plow and too thick to drink. But they do irrigate and they do water livestock. It's not a real pretty river at that point, but we did what we could. We focused on environmental safety and also human health. Write everything down. If it happened today, it's written down that it happened today. If you sent something out, whether it be samples for analysis, or a motor went out, or a motor came back, you had a conversation with someone from the state, you had a conversation with the machine shop. You found something new, something you didn't know you were going to find, you found something, you write it down. You keep those records, and you forward them on to the state. They're good to work with. We also accelerated our testing. Our facility only is required to test twice a week for a lot of our parameters. We were testing every day. Some of the analysis we do in-house, we're doing it several times a day. Inform your insurance carrier as soon as possible. Here is the only real glitch I could see in the whole process. We informed an insurance carrier, and we were forwarded on to another company who was a third-party carrier. I don't know, is that the correct term?
DPA.
Okay.
Third-party administrator.
Ah, okay. And their adjuster said, well, send me a list of the damaged equipment. So we started making a list. And after just a few pages of lists, he went, wait, well, this is a way above my pay grade, and we got kicked to somebody else. We kept sending in pages of it, and pretty soon they got it. So it wasn't until the third person that we were working with that we actually got someone from their third-party administrator to come out and look at the plant. Now, this is the one thing we should have done differently was demand we have an adjuster who came on site right from the get-go. I mentioned you need to watch out for and prevent, if you can, secondary permit violations. And then rely on your employee expertise. I'm sure, as I look out in this crowd, a lot of you have 20, 25 years, 30 years experience. You have expertise in your field. Hopefully your supervisors, or if you want a supervisor, you rely on those people because they have seen a lot of stuff. I don't think anyone who works in our fields would say that in 5 years they see the stuff that they would see after 15 or 20. There's just some stuff that doesn't come around now. But it's nice to know when it does come around, someone who's been there 25 plus years will probably have seen it. You're going to get a lot of outside advice. I told my father-in-law, he asked me right after I married his daughter, he said, do you mind if I give you some advice? And I said, don't mind at all. Do you mind if I choose what to follow? He said, don't mind at all. So we had this great relationship. Same thing, you're going to get lots of advice. Some from people who are in the industry, from different facilities, some from the state, a lot from the public, a lot from elected officials who don't know the first thing about your industry, but they're elected officials. So be careful of the Monday morning quarterback. And again, keep them apprised of the situation. Also, social media is a great tool these days. A lot of people have questions. Not that they're questioning your ability or your decisions, but they just want to be informed. So you keep that going, keep them aware, and you know that good information you keep sending out will solve a lot of your problems. Worry about the money afterward. Carry the important stuff up front. The money you can deal with later. So this is what it looks like now. We are fully functional. We're under permit. These pictures were actually taken just prior to the painting being done, final cleanups. But we're ready for tours. We have all been painted. Our floors are done. Here's the silver lining. Our plant was 30 years old at the time of the flood, and 29. At 29 years old, you've rebuilt your motors and your pumps and your controls several times. I think Mike Moore said, you know, you need to look at doing that every 5 to 10 years. So we've rebuilt them several times. Because of this, I have basically a 30-year-old plant with all new equipment. About 95% new equipment and controls and whatnot. Now, we're not perfect because I'm still trying to put together some of those roadways and things like that. But we're okay. We're in pretty good shape. As I mentioned, what would we do differently? First off is I would request the adjuster come today. Not after we give them a list of what was damaged, but today. And I think that is probably a pretty good general rule on all public works. If you have something that is damaged in the public works, we need to get somebody out there to look at it today because it's going to, if it was damaged here, it's going to have the domino effect in parts of your system.
my investments, retirement, insurance.
You're going to have a domino effect. Life comes at you fast. You don't know what you're going to find until you start looking into things. We just got an email, I think it was last week, from a lady who's from Constitutional State Services, who has been that third-party administrator. They are into almost $2 million. And she was just verifying, have we paid all of your claims? Are we good? And it's been almost 2 years. It's 23 months. So we found things along the way. We found an intake. We have makeup water for a boiler system. Well, where the water comes in, it was fouled by the floodwaters. But we didn't think about the boilers because the boilers were upstairs. But the intake water got in and fouled the boilers, but they didn't fail for 16 months. So now we have new boilers as well. But we didn't discover them until 16 months after the fact. So you need to be careful what you're going to find. We were doing a lot of this on our own for the first few months, again, because we were dealing with sending in lists, and then this adjuster saying, well, I'm going to kick it up the ladder to somebody else, up the ladder to somebody else. So bring in your outside contractors, help you clean up, replace your damaged equipment. Our employees did a lot of this on our own, and that was a benefit to the insurance company. They probably should have or would have hired a contractor, an outside contractor, to come in and replace a lot of this stuff. And this was brought up earlier. If this happens again, guess what I'm going to do? And a lot of our employees have said, not again. So we need to make sure it's not going to happen again. So we have now constructed dikes around our wastewater plant. As I mentioned before, the ponds on the bottom, they have 15-foot wall dikes around them. The county road, which is on the north end, was the high point. And so we tied in 3 different dikes so that the main part of the plant is now behind a 4-foot, 5-foot wall in some places. So if it happens again, we're going to be an island unto ourselves, and hopefully we're going to be able to watch all that water go by. We just hope the 1,000-year flood doesn't happen for another 1,000 years. And I won't care. Any questions? No? Oh, yes.
Can you touch a little bit on how the collection system?
Yeah. So we have 3 lift stations in our system. One of those lift stations was underwater. And when I say underwater, not just that it was an island, it was underwater. The nice thing is they're submersible pumps, so it doesn't matter that they're underwater, they're meant to be underwater. But it was backing up into people's homes. People who had been able to put sandbags around their property, around their houses, to keep the river out, was backing up through the lift station, through the sewer system, into their floor drains, and into their homes. Was it the sewer that was backing up? Yeah, it was, but mostly it was the river that was backing up. And those claims all got turned into our insurance carrier as well. Because this falls under one of those things called an act of God. It's not a deficiency on the district's part. It's not that we weren't cleaning the collection system, but we had several homes that were damaged that way, yeah. Since then, when the water's receded, we've gone through and inspected. We have the sewer cleaning equipment, we have video equipment, and we've gone in there and made sure we don't have a bunch of silting. And that was our greatest fear, is when you have water like this, you've got that very, very fine silt. And if you don't get it cleaned out, especially on PVC, it turns to concrete if it has a chance to dry. The other nice thing, though, is where it's underground and it's in a closed pipe, it stays wet for a long time, so we can get to it. So, yes. A lot of silt, but not so much the debris, because how the water got into it was either through manhole lid holes, or through, just small holes in your lift station and whatnot, stuff like that. We did have a lot of debris backed up against our fencing, because all of our lift stations and those kinds of facilities have chain link fence around. So we did have to pull a lot of debris off that way. So that acted like a screen for us. But yeah, not a lot of large debris in the collection system, but a lot of really fine particles. But all we could do at that point was wash it down, wash it down, wash it down.
So how many houses?
Half a dozen that were backed up into outside of those that were damaged, and those were neighbors. They were neighbors to those that were damaged. They were in the low-lying areas. A secondary problem to this was the power company. They have power poles that are, all different places, and those power poles were compromised. They actually lost power in that area, and they had to shut down power to those 40 homes that were damaged, because then they had rescuers going in and live wire, and so they had to shut down that whole area, which shut down the lift station, which they also had to replace power poles in that area, so it was a lot of problem that way. But to get our system up and running, we just brought in temporary power and try to act independently. I was talking to a gentleman who works for a small town in Utah County, and we're talking about unrelated to this situation. We have found the hard way is you can't rely on the other utilities for your system. If you have critical infrastructure, you need to have power. If you rely on your SCADA system, don't rely on the phone system or the internet that goes through the phone system. We've done wireless through radio signal. It's just stuff that we've learned the hard way that you kind of have to be self-sufficient in most cases. Not that they're good, not good utilities. It's just if you're relying on them, you're going to have to rely on what they can do or can't do. Anyway. Anything else? Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right, good job, Jeff Richards.